Nerdcast assemble!
Stay dandy, baby. Greetings, my fellow anime chums. I hope you're excited for a high-octane, high-flying anime review. It just so happens that it's October, which means it's the perfect time to take a look at an anime series which is all about witches. But these are not your typical old hags riding around on brooms. Oh no! These are cute, adorable anime girls who are strapped to high-powered weaponry and fighting against alien invaders. That's right, I've officially reached that point of my anime reviewing career where I finally get to talk about strike witches. God damn it! I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I was not looking forward to this review at all, but it was a review which is brought to you by Alexander Chen, a wonderful human being who's decided to check me out on Patreon, and he requested that I take a look at the 2008 classic that is Strike Witches, and I knew almost nothing of the franchise before I decided to dive in. I just knew about everything that I saw on the surface. And my biggest fear is that it was basically just going to be an excuse for really uncomfortable fan service with very young underage characters. And unfortunately, that's basically what I ended up getting. But are there any good qualities to Strike Witches? Well, let's go ahead and check out. This is my review of Strike Witches. FBI, open up! Strike Witches was created by Fumikane Shimada, and it's what's known as a media mix franchise. This is basically a real fancy way of saying that it's been adapted into several different forms, such as light novels, manga, anime series, coloring books, lunchboxes, and flamethrowers.
Bet kids love this one.
The basic premise of the series is all about these young magical girls, which are known as witches. And unlike the typical ones that we see in series like Harry Potter, who ride around on brooms, they use these mechanical machines known as striker units, which basically attach directly to their legs and allow them to go into aerial combat. They fight against these alien-like invaders, which are known as the Nuroi. And at the end of the day, that's basically the entire premise of the show. They don't really explain anything. What are the Nuroi? Why does magic exist in this world? Why is this some sort of weird alternate retelling of World War II with super cute girls who use massive machine guns? There's a lot of questions I have for Strike Witches, but I learned after the third episode of the series that I just need to stop asking those questions and just try to take the series for what it is. The problem was I couldn't take it all that serious because, well, the fact of the matter is, Strike Witches is a very fan service heavy show. This was made apparent by the first episode of the series. It seemed like the animators were constantly going out of their way to make me feel uncomfortable. There was a really awesome action scene taking place, and I honestly found myself getting pretty invested in it, but I constantly kept getting taken out of the action when it seemed like every 2 seconds the camera was constantly sweeping underneath some minge. But oh, it doesn't stop there. This is an absolute cocktail of camel toe and ass shots. And honestly, it just creeped me out while I was watching it. No joke, every single time I watched an episode, I was constantly looking over my shoulder to make sure no one was seeing that I was watching Strike Witches. It made me so uncomfortable that by the end of every single episode, I honestly thought that Chris Hansen was just gonna emerge from a shadowy doorway.
What's happening? Why don't you have a seat right over here for me?
The fan service itself, I have to admit, was very off-putting, and it didn't help either that the story itself was relatively stock. The anime series follows a young new recruit of the Strike Witches who goes by the name of Yoshika Miyafuji, and she ends up joining the group in order to learn a little bit more about the mysterious disappearance of her father, who coincidentally also has a strong connection to the alien invaders known as the Nuroi. He's also single-handedly responsible for creating the striker units and the weapons which are used by the Strike Witches. Now you would think Yoshika is easily the youngest member of the group. They're not going to try and sexualize this young girl, are they? Oh! Nope, get prepared to be assaulted by every single type of crotch shot the series can throw at you. So, while I could spend this entire review basically making fun of the fact that the series is incredibly disturbing and loves sexualizing its younger characters, I do actually want to talk about some of the highlights of the show, which, believe it or not, are actually kind of fun. Visually speaking, from an animation standpoint, watching these girls fly around over the ocean fighting against intergalactic giant bomber aliens is honestly kind of cool. It's a really great concept that, without the fan service, could probably turn it something a little more classy. That and the fact that I do love that every single character in the series seems to actually be modeled after a real World War II pilot, and that's also reflected in their personalities as well as the actual weapons that they use. So World War II buffs, you're definitely gonna like this series. They constantly remind you of this fact, as the entire series itself is actually set during the 1940s, and this is kind of like a weird quasi-what-if version of World War II, where instead of the Nazis invading, it was basically giant, weird, replicating aliens that transform into giant ships that have to have their cores destroyed by magical girls flying around with machine guns. Essentially, at the end of the day, Strike Witches is all about the new kid on the block, the newest member of the team who meets up with all of the previous members who have their own unique personalities and quirks, hopes, dreams, and fears. So there's a lot of characters for you to actually get attached to. My personal favorite was the actual lead of the Strike Witches, Mio Sakamoto. There's just something really cool about her character. I don't know if it's the sword or the eye patch or just the fact that she's the oldest member of the group, but she just commands a lot of awesomeness about her character. There's a number of others that I think are some pretty big standouts, and most of the first season does take the time to introduce one of them, explain who they are, and you do find yourself getting attached to them in the fear that maybe something bad might end up happening to them. The character of Yoshika, outside of some weird fan service moments, is wholly inoffensive. She's a fun, cute character who has an important mission. She wants to see what happened to her father, which is still completely up in the air. Even by the end of the season, you don't quite know if the guy is dead or alive. It is also worth mentioning that at the very beginning of the series, Yoshika is something of a pacifist. It's not until she joins the Strike Witches that she realizes that her gifted abilities will allow her to save a lot of people, thus she ends up getting drafted into this massive war. As for the other characters in the series, there's okay. There's the one with big boobs, there's the other one with big boobs, there's the two best friends, there's the little blonde chick who's a little firecracker, there's the annoying little girl who loves to grab the boobs of all of her friends, oh yeah, and there's the other one with the big boobs.
Oh man, I love titties, so.
Look, I'm not saying that you can't get invested in these characters, but it just felt kind of like a half-hearted attempt, and I always ended up forgetting about who they were or even what their names were when we got to the big action scenes, which ultimately are the highlights of the entire show. The actual striker units themselves are actually pretty cool in the way that they're implemented, and I love that they use a combination of that with their magical abilities. At its core, however, Strike Witches is kind of a fetish anime. That's the feeling that I get from it. It's not just the fact that they're young girls who are sexually suggestive, but even just the fact that when they actually utilize these abilities, they grow cat and bunny ears and tails. It's like a combination of so many different fetishes. It's kind of weird to say the least. And I don't know why, but the characters in the show, the females, refuse to wear pants. They just don't do it. Why don't they wear pants? You know what these girls need?
A tailor.
Seriously, at the beginning of the show, there's like 2 chicks that actually wear pants, and that's basically Yoshika's mom and grandmother. After that, it's a pantsless world, baby! Aside from a few action scenes, there is one other thing about the show that I really like, and it might seem kind of strange. That's the sound design. I love that they actually use the sound of World War II planes when they're actually flying around. It manages to enhance all of the action scenes that much more, and that combined with the pretty smooth animation of watching them dip, dive, and dodge around all of these big attacks and utilize all of their signature abilities, honestly makes every single time they sortie a real thrill. There's a great sense of scale and scope and size when they're actually flying around in the air or when they're going over like a deep valley or a landscape. You really do sort of like get that vertigo feeling as you're flying around with them. And then suddenly you're taken out of the action when you get some vag in your face. It's a give and take kind of anime series, and honestly, I could take it or leave it. It's just the type of show that personally is not for me. That being said, I still found myself getting a little bit of enjoyment out of the show, but ultimately, I don't find myself revisiting Strike Witches anytime. It's the type of show that's aimed at a certain type of customer, and frankly, that's just not me. but your thoughts may differ, and I'd really love to hear all of your thoughts in the comments section below. If any of you had an opportunity to watch the very first season of Strike Witches, or read the light novels, or the manga, or any of the other crazy spin-offs that have existed about this weird show, sound off in the comments section below. I'd love to get your thoughts about it. Yours might greatly differ from mine. You might not mind the fan service. You might have something else about the series you like. You might not even like the show like I do. The point is, I really want to hear a different perspective on this. This was the toughest Patreon review that I've ever had to do. It was really hard to get through the series. It was hard to get invested in all of the characters, especially when I was only looking forward to the actual action scenes. And overall, it was an interesting anime experience to say the least. I can at least now say that I've seen Strike Witches. I just don't see myself diving any further into the actual franchise. What I will say is, thank you Alexander Chen for at least introducing me to a show that otherwise I would have never watched. At least now I have a little bit of knowledge about it. And I'd love to get your thoughts in the comments section below as well, just to talk about the show a little bit, and maybe you can convince me otherwise. Maybe there is a reason to check out the future seasons of the show. Maybe these characters will grow and become more mature. Maybe they will give us some solid answers as to who these mysterious enemies are, where the magic in this world actually comes from. As it stands, the first season of Strike Witches essentially is basically just a straight introduction to the actual world itself. It throws you directly into the fire, and it doesn't stop from there. It's basically just a high-flying spectacle, but man, is it just absolutely drenched in fan service. And whether that makes it good or bad really depends on the viewer themselves. For me, it's not for me. If I could even give the series a score, I think I might give it a 2.5 out of 5. And that's strictly for the animation and some of the sound design and some of the big action scenes. That's basically it. I didn't really find myself getting super attached to any of the characters, as this entire season was basically just about introducing them. Maybe in the next season they dive into them a little bit more in the actual lore of this world, but that remains to be seen. I'm not an authority on that. What I will say is, the first season of Strike Witches, maybe you should check it out. You might love it, you might hate it. Like I said, sound off with your thoughts in the comment section below. So, there it is. That's my very strange review of Strike Witches. Like I said, I'd definitely love to get all of your thoughts about the series. Make sure to tell me in the comment section below. If you did get some enjoyment and liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. If any of you are actually subscribed to the channel, make sure you're hitting that bell notification icon. It'll actually let you know when all of my content is released. And, of course, my patrons. I gotta thank you guys. You guys are the ones who make these type of reviews possible. And remember, first-time donators, I will review an anime series of your choice. That's right, make a donation through my Patreon. I'll review an anime series, basically anything that you want, with a few stipulations, of course. If it's got way too many episodes, I'm definitely not going to be able to review the whole thing. If it's something that's divided in seasons, like, say, this one with Strike Witches, it's very easy to do, and it takes a little time, and I like to put more effort into these reviews, but overall, that's kind of the thing there. I'd also love to add your name to this list of awesome people who are continuing to support the channel all the time. These guys are effectively the producers of Ace Guru, and I cannot thank you enough. But really, the best way to support my channel is to continue to watch my content and share it with all of your friends, and I can't thank all of you enough for that. But that being said, I'm glad that I could deliver another Patreon review to you guys. I have another one that's going to be coming up very soon. It's a significantly shorter series at only 6 episodes, considering that it is a classic OVA, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay down there, baby.